Well, hello, folks. It is really nice to be here with all of you today for the Fedora 37 release party. It's really exciting to me to be in this side of things with Fedora for a change. I've been involved in Fedora for about seven years now, and had many chances to meet a lot of you. Some of you are new and are new names, new faces for me, and I'm excited to get to know you better as I'm coming into this role. And so I'd like to use this as a chance to talk a little bit about, well, I guess I go ahead and move forward here. So this talk has two different chapters. I'm going to talk a little bit about me and my background and my open source journey, how I've landed here in the Fedora community, and also just share a little bit of a view on what I really think is part of the magic that's helped keep Fedora, help keep us together as a community and a project for almost the last 20 years. And that's really impressive. You know, a lot of, I feel like today open source is really starting to become more well-known, better accepted, and you don't have a lot of communities that have been around the block, as they say, as Fedora has been. So I want to share a little bit on my thoughts on how we've kept this amazing community and project going over these years and what helps keep us all together. So chapter 1, a little bit on my background and story here. So for me, we were just talking about, well, Minetest, Minecraft. For me, my open source journey began when I was still a high school student. In 2013, actually in 2011, 2012, I used to run a Minecraft server, which started off kind of as a small thing and then gradually evolved and grew into kind of like being a small business for me. And I got to know, running a Minecraft server, open source is everywhere. It's also in Minecraft. So there's a very large open source community called Spigot, which has an open source Minecraft server implementation. So you can use Spigot instead of the default server software that Mojang, the Minecraft developer company, produces. It's very simple. It's not very moddable. Spigot has an API, so people can build plugins and modify the game in ways. You have a huge community of people who are all, tinkering around with Minecraft, and that was where my open source journey began. So I was a community staff member there in the Spigot community. I had a couple of chances to travel to some of the Minecon conventions back when that was still a thing and help fly the Spigot open source flag. So this was kind of where my journey began. But it was around 2015, 2016 that I started to get to know more about Fedora. So being in Minecraft server administration, I was running Linux. I was using a lot of Linux to help power my Minecraft servers. And I think I remember for me, it was that I started using CentOS. And then I found out that Fedora and CentOS are both like the RPM family. And I was like, I think what made me install Fedora and keep it there and not do distro hopping, I was like, I'm going to use Fedora. And then all this server stuff that 15-year-old me was swimming in, trying to understand. I was like, oh, it's going to start to make more sense, right? And, it kind of did. But so in 2015, 2016, I started to pay more attention or get more involved in all these things that were happening around Fedora because I had been using it for at least a year or two up to this point. And for me, my first, I always feel like I had a weird introduction in Fedora because I think a lot of people come into the project first as, engaging with people online and meeting people. So my first one, which is this name badge here, was the 2015 Flock event. If you don't know, Flock are these, we have a couple of different events we've done the last two years, like Nest with Fedora, Patch with Fedora, kind of our big contributor events. So Flock has been our in-person events that we were running from, I think it was 2013 to 2019. And then we've kind of put it on pause for the last 2 years of COVID. But for me, that's where I first got to meet the Fedora project and the community was in 2015 in Rochester, New York, which would end up being where I was actually going to school. So I ended up moving in a week early for my freshman year. And I was like, I'm gonna, what? The Fedora conference is happening the week before. I have to move up early and check this out. So for me, that was where I first got this introduction to all this craziness that we do here in Fedora and got to meet so many amazing people who, up to that point, I maybe just knew as a it's an avatar or an IRC nickname. And from here, things only got crazier. So I started to get involved with the Fedora magazine. My first article on the Fedora magazine was how to use Spigot on Fedora and run a Minecraft server. And I started to have check out some of these things that were going on with ambassadors, like around events. You can see some of these photos here of our event kits from back in the Fedora 24, 25 days. And unfortunately, that cake was never one that I had. It was someone else, but I just remember seeing this photo of a Fedora cake. And I just thought that was the coolest thing when I was in my freshman year in college. And so I started to get more involved with this community and get to know the people that were involved here a little bit more. And, you know, as I became more involved, Fedora started to open doors for me. And the big picture here was from one of my first events that I traveled to with Fedora. I think this would have been 2016. Was for Hack MIT. It was a student hackathon that was hosted at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Picture here was Charles Prophet, who is a good friend and mentor of mine, who helped me wrangle all of the organizing for those events. We went 2 years to Hack MIT. And so I had these opportunities to go and travel. You know, Fedora was going to help support me, you know, travel around and run a little booth for the project and talk to students and talk to other people. I had opportunities to get to, you know, meet more people and also kind of broaden my network as well. So the community has always had a really special place for me because I've had these opportunities that, especially when I was, you know, at the time was an undergrad student in college, you know, would never have been accessible to me, especially as a, you know, broke student, you know, the living in ramen stereotype kind of thing, you know. But Fedora, I really had a chance to broaden my network, meet lots of amazing people, and also do a little bit of travel as well. Along the way, I also had a chance to meet so many great mentors who have helped guide me and shape my career to be where it is today. Pictured here this was also when I was a student. This was a session at the Rochester Institute of Technology in either 2015 or 2016. This was the first, well, back when it was not FCAIC, it was just FCL, Fedora Community Lead. Pictured here was Remy DeCosmaker, who was the kind of first person to enter this role as the Fedora community person at Red Hat. And so, you know, for me at the time, Remy was also someone who was in the same city that I was at my university, and he helped mentor me along when we were getting started with the community operations team in Fedora and doing the Fedora community blog. Those were both parts of the Fedora project that were, you know, born around 2015 or so. And Remy, for me, helped show me the ropes, and not just Remy, but many other people as well across the project, who helped show me the ropes and, you know, make it feel like Fedora was a place that I belonged, that I had a role here, and that I had something I could contribute. So fast forward a little bit, and we get to 2016, and by this point, I had been contributing to the project like since that first flock that was in Rochester for about a year. And I'd been doing things for up to a year at that point. And then we had this chance to go to, this was in Krakow in Poland in 2016. And this for me was that catalyst moment where I feel like there was no turning back after this point. So this was a chance, this was for me, I really got to, you know, when I came to Flock in 2015, I was a total stranger. I didn't know anybody. I was like kind of just seeing Fedora for the first time. But in 2016, at that point, I knew a lot of these people and many people who I consider really good friends. And so this event was an opportunity for me to really strengthen and deepen that love for the Fedora project beyond just the things that we were doing as a Linux distribution and a project, but also the people that are behind this amazing community and all the things that we do, not just to ship bits and bytes, but to come together and work on something that we all care about as a community. And I couldn't help but give a shout out to this one with Marie as well, who is in this photo from the 2016 flock. So, you know, from this point on, I mentioned there was kind of no going back for me. You know, Fedora became more than just a project. It became more than just, you know, this thing I was helping do in my free time, but it was also a place where I had gotten to meet many amazing people and I got to meet people from all around the world, and got to make these relationships that go beyond just the daily in and out things that we do as a project, but many people who would end up becoming really good friends of mine. So, for me, this is where I really started to feel like, as my undergraduate, my studies started to go a little further along, and I started to kind of do other things as well. But Fedora has always been an important part of my life for me. And, it's never really been, especially the more I go on, the more I realize that what we do is really important as a community. And the things that we all share and we come together with every year, doing these release parties, doing these, hatch and nest and flock events. It's always been a chance where you really get to see that passion that people bring into this project and in this community. So from there, my world also started to open up. Through Fedora, I had all these opportunities to meet people and travel and see things that, me being I had never left the country before 2015 or 2016. And this was all things that if you had asked me before, like 3 years before I got involved with Fedora, how things were going to go, I would never have been able to predict any of those things that have ended up happening here. Lots of familiar faces and good friends here on this picture. Things like I had a chance to travel to, be a speaker at Linux Weekend in Tirana, Albania, where we have a really strong contributor community. I also had a chance to meet some of my Fedora friends in India, and a trip in 2017, and everywhere in between as well. So, Fedora really helped in my own career. I also was meeting all these people and getting to know the project, but I was also getting to have new experiences and see things that were very different from the small town in the US South that I grew up in. I had these opportunities to see things and experience things, culture, and the things that make us humans beyond the things that we do as part of our in and out daily work at doing a distribution like Fedora. So I also started to find more opportunities. I think this one is really important to me too, because, as I go on in my career, now I've kind of come back into this role with, coming back into Fedora in a way where I can spend a lot more time on it. But over my career, Fedora has been really helpful for me as a reference point as I go on into the free and open source space. Talking with people here at this, I mentioned in the opening remarks that I'm attended All Things Open, which is a US open source conference in Raleigh, North Carolina. And talking with people here who know about Fedora and are maybe doing open source in other spaces, it always amazes me how special the things that we do here are. We have a very strong set of values. So one of these values that we have in the Fedora community is our commitment to free and open source software. Everything that we ship in our Linux distribution is licensed under an open source license. And as a result, I think for a lot of communities, it kind of ends at the licensing piece. Like, okay, you put a license on it, now you're going to try to build a product around it. That's fine and dandy. But what makes Fedora so special is that, this is part of our ethos, like our values of what we do and why we do it. One of those is our commitment to these free and open source principles. And going out in the space, I mentioned All Things Open because I was talking with people here who really look at Fedora as a model and a leader in the open source space. We're doing a lot of things that a lot of communities aren't, or either just haven't gotten to yet. Part of why, like I mentioned, we're going on almost 20 years now. So we've had a lot of time to, not saying that everything has been perfect and smooth sailing. I definitely have fond memories of the Flock 2017 keynote with the dumpster fire, state of Fedora charts that Matthew pulled up. But my point is, we've had a lot of time to really think through some of these really big challenges around how we work as a community. COVID came into the mix of things 2.5 years ago, and I've seen a lot of companies, a lot of communities really struggle with going to that virtual online format. Not saying that Fedora didn't have, a perfect time, but for a lot of us, this was kind of like business as usual, like, well, the online virtual working together and staying connected, especially. We've been doing these kind of things for a long time. And I think that's a really amazing thing that we end up kind of playing this role as a model or a leader in the open source space. And so for me, in my own career, Fedora has been extremely helpful and has opened many, I mentioned earlier, opened many doors for me. I've tried to I have these pictures of the MetaBrains community, which is the organization behind a very large open source project called Music Brains. It's like I'd say the open source Wikipedia of music metadata. And so I got involved with that community and she was sharing things like, hey, we have this community operations team and we have these like marketing teams and design team in Fedora. And I was just talking to people there about like, well, how could, Music Brains or MetaBrains do things better and kind of take some of these learnings that Fedora has learned and apply that to their own community. For me, I started working with UNICEF originally as an intern in 2018. And my role before I joined Red Hat last month was with UNICEF. I was working with these startup companies from all over the world who were building open source products. And my role with UNICEF was I was a coach, basically, helping work with these like founders and developers from these small startup companies from all around the world, try to think through like, how do you do FOSS? How do you do open source? How do you figure out licensing and the legal sides? Like, where do you start with that? How do you build a community around what you're doing? How do you set up documentation? And in so many cases and so many times across my career, Fedora has been a reference point for me. I'm able to point back at things that we've done in Fedora and say like, hey, we had this challenge 4 years ago and, there were these things and here's how we went about trying to solve this problem, or here's what we built as an answer to this challenge. And, I think that's something that's really amazing and special about Fedora is that we get to be this role of a leader or model in many ways, both inside our own project sometimes, and also in ways that we might not expect as well. So the rest, as they say, is history. I'm extremely excited to be in this role for working with Fedora with all of my time now in a way that I never had until now. So I'm still, wrapping my head around a lot of things. A lot of times we joke about, a fire hose of information coming at you. So I still feel like I'm kind of getting over that initial hurdle, but I'm hoping that over the next couple weeks and months, you'll get to see more of me again in the community across the project. And I would love to get to know, we'll catch up with a lot of older names and faces that I haven't had a chance to in a while, and also get to meet lots of the new folks. Again, like I love these release parties because it really is nice to me when I see, people who have been around for 5 years, and I see names that I've never seen before, people who are here for the very first time. So that's really special to me. And I'm glad that I get to be in this role, working with such an amazing community. And I'm looking forward to being more involved and getting more hands-on as things continue. So today, this is I think kind of as my story began with being a mentee, having lots of people who helped me in my journey, who helped make Fedora feel like a space that I belonged, that I could contribute something here. I had something meaningful to share back with the project, which was always kind of my whole thing. Is like back when I was doing the Minecraft server, it was like, I was always so thankful for having this platform and these tools and this community that I could always come back to and get help from, or I always wanted to give back. And so now I'm a little further along in my career and being involved in Fedora. To me, the story is shifting more towards a story of mentoring instead of being mentored. So I think this will be will continue to be an important part of the narrative around Fedora in the coming future. So we have about Well, we have 10 minutes left. I want to try to fit a little bit of time in for questions here at the end, but I do want to talk a little bit about what this Fedora story is, what our Fedora story is. So, I kind of shared a little bit through these pictures and these stories from my own life, like what is it that makes Fedora for me? But here, I think, we're still here almost 20 years later. And I think a big part of that is, I kind of came up with these 3 C's. We have a lot of creativity in our community, both from an engineering perspective and a non-engineering perspective. I love this idea of, just calling out the session that's going to follow this one, or it's definitely coming up today around that Creative Freedom Summit. That's one that there's not really been a space for things like this before. And then also our culture. I mentioned a little bit that we have these, I mentioned the free and open source part. That's a really important part of our values and our culture in the Fedora project. We have a really strong belief in not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it. And then we also have an amazing community, an inclusive community that really values people coming from wherever they're coming from, however they can contribute, whether you can contribute, an hour or you can contribute 20 hours. I really think that's something that's very special to Fedora, is this amazing community of human beings that we have, amazing human beings that we have. So you could call this our common call to care, not just, for our work as a Linux distribution, an engineering excellence perspective, maybe part of why we're not shipping Fedora 37 before the party, because we wanted to make sure we get this piece right around, the OpenSSL vulnerability and having people who have images that they'll ship on even hardware or devices. We have that desire to care for our work. We also have this desire to care for each other as a project and a community. I'd like to take this time to really give a shout out to Marie Norden, who has just been an amazing steward of our virtual spaces over these last 2 years with Nest and the Hatch events that we tried out. Well, we tried out for the first time this year. We really have this value of, taking care of each other and being there for each other as a community, as not just people working on some software technology project. You look at GitHub, there's hundreds of thousands of that kind of stuff out there. But it's what makes us different is that we have this really strong belief in, working together and working with amazing people as well. So it's kind of our common call to care for excellence from a engineering perspective as a Linux distribution, but also as a community of people from all over the world. But as it happens, we actually spell all of these things out. It's not something you have to get involved to find out, although it definitely can change your perspective. But I want to call out what we have as the 4 foundations. Maybe I should have had a pre-slide to introduce this. But we have 4 foundations in Fedora, and I think it's something that's really special. I've talked to a lot of people over the years, and it always impresses me how this has been like a common rally point for a lot of us as a thing that brings us together, is these 4 foundations of the Fedora project, which you can find in our project charter on the Fedora docs website. But the first one of that, there's 4 of them. We often call them the 4 Fs. So you might know these already, or maybe this is new for you, or you're hearing about it for the first time. So one of those is the Freedom Foundation. I did mention this one earlier about our commitment to using free and open source software. We only, Fedora Linux only ships software that is available under free and open source software licenses. And that's a big thing, not just beyond what we ship, but also around a lot of what we use and consume as we try to build this project, as we try to build this community. Matrix and Element as an open source platform for us to collaborate. Discourse as a discussion forum for the community to share news and announcements or have discussions about big ideas. This is something that you see reflected across not just what we build, not just what we deliver, but also how we work and how we collaborate and work together. This one, I think, is definitely near and dear to a lot of people. It's definitely a huge part of what makes Fedora feel like Fedora to me. I mentioned is that piece around friends. The second F in the 4 foundation is friends, that we are an amazing community of people who care about each other and value the relationships that we build with each other, that it goes beyond just having a Linux distribution, beyond just having a bunch of code that we ship, but it's around the people we get to work with, that we get to have, ideas and collaboration from all different places. For me, when I was first getting involved, I was just an undergrad student who was like helping out in my free time, and ended up getting really involved and meeting all these people who were doing, some of them were paid, some of them were volunteering, some were coming from a wide range of places, from countries all over the world. And those relationships that I've built and those things I've gotten to learn about our fellow community members has been a really special part to me. I think to also many of you as well. We also have the Features Foundation, which I think ties into a lot of our work as a Linux distribution, shipping, some of these new innovative kinds of features. We're always trying to bring in some of the latest things that are happening around Linux and test them with each other. Fedora is really interesting as a distribution because we get to be this integration hub of a lot of different things across the free and open source software world. We do deliver a single deliverable, kind of like Fedora Linux, even though we do have many editions doing many different kinds of things. But at the end of the day, we're getting to integrate all these different projects and communities together in one place. And a lot of that you see in our work as a distribution, but a lot of times you'll see Fedora folks working upstream, as we say, going to other projects that we use in Fedora and helping improve those projects, make fixes or make compatibility changes. Like, I was just reading the Ruby 3.2 change proposal for, I think it's Fedora 38. And, like some of the work that's involved there is like, okay, we're going to build Ruby 3.2, and then we're going to build all the dependencies of the package and then figure out what's working and what's not. If a package breaks, well, we're going to go help by going upstream and helping fix those projects so everyone can benefit, not just people who are using Fedora. And finally, the last F of the 4 foundations is first. I think a big part of what we do in Fedora is that we try to be on not the bleeding edge, but the leading edge, really trying to be at the forefront of innovation in the Linux distribution space. We're oftentimes one of the first projects or the first communities to try out new things. And that's just from the engineering side. I think this also goes beyond just engineering and into what we do as a community. Community operations, actually the diversity team, I think, is a great example of this. When we started in 2015, just the diversity team, and there weren't really a lot of projects in the open source space that were really thinking about diversity at the time. The Fedora Council added a new diversity advisor seat to the council in 2015. And, the team has evolved now. We're not just the diversity team, we're the DEI team now. And it's very interesting to me to talk to other people in other communities to see how they've modeled their approach. Even the Fedora ambassadors is also a great example of this as well. Many other projects and communities have used Fedora as a model, not just from engineering side, but in the community end as well. So we really value that in Fedora, that we try to be first. We try to be at the very forefront of innovation and new ideas in the Linux space, whether that's about the bits and the bytes that we ship, or it's about the ways that we work and how we collaborate. So I'll just call out again, those 4 foundations are great, but they wouldn't mean anything if it weren't for people like you who are a part of this big picture of things as well. So thank you for being a part of this release party and this event, whether it's you've attended every release party we've done since COVID, this is your first time. Thank you for being here and sharing this space with us this weekend. I'll call out just a few couple of things before I wrap up here. I just want to call out, we do have a project charter in Fedora where you can find more details about these four foundations. We also have a vision and a mission statement, which are kind of like the North Star or the guiding principles of what we do as a community in a project. So our vision, the Fedora project envisions a world where everyone benefits from free and open source software built by inclusive, welcoming, and open-minded communities. You can think of this as kind of the very big picture, the aspirational statement of where are we going and why are we trying to go there. And our mission statement is a little more concrete. We talk a little bit more about the how, how are we going to accomplish that vision? Well, Fedora creates an innovative platform for hardware, clouds, and containers that enables software developers and community members, not just engineers, to build tailored solutions for their users. So, you can kind of better understand better around the culture and the values that we have here in Fedora and why that's an important part of our community. So I do encourage you can go on the Fedora documentation. I think it's docs.fedoraproject.org/project, where you can find more information about all those things I just talked about, our vision, our mission. There's 4 foundations that we have as a project and a community. I definitely encourage you to read our project charter if you have not already. With that, I think we are just about right on time. I'll try to take some questions after or in the chat. I know folks I think there's a break actually after this, so we might have some time for maybe a little bit of Q&A, but thank you so much for listening and being here and sharing this space with me today. And I'm looking forward to working more with all of you over the coming weeks and months as we go into Fedora Linux 38. Thank you. All right. I do see it. There's a new question here in the Q&A. What is your initial not holding to it big bet? Ooh, David, good question. Well, I am trying to be really careful right now because a lot of what I feel like I'm doing is listening, really trying to understand. Well, there's a lot of parts of Fedora that I know really well. And there's also a lot of parts of Fedora that I don't know really well. So a large part of what I'm doing right now is just trying to listen and understand what everyone is doing and how, because we are a huge project. I think what also makes us unique is that, there's not a single place where things happen. There are several different channels. There are several different places that you can get involved and keep up with things in Fedora. So right now I'm trying to figure out a couple different directions of something like one thing that I could start to pick up or lead on. And there's definitely a soft spot. I did mention mentoring as a really important part of why has shaped my career in Fedora, and also a little bit on how I think we're shifting more as a community now. But that's something I am thinking a little bit more about, is how we can support a culture of mentoring. If you were here at NEST 2022, you might remember, if you were at I think it was State of Fedora from Matthew, where he talked about some of our, we're trying to build our strategy for the next 5 years as a project. We had Fedora.next, which shaped our project and community for the last 5 years. It's what brought about the emergence of these editions. It's kind of a newer thing that we're doing as a project. So right now, one of those pieces of the 5-year strategy we're talking about now is that everyone in Fedora should either have a mentor or be a mentor. So for me, I really want to spend some time thinking around how we can continue to support people with resources and guidance for this, because I think sometimes it can come intuitively to people, and other times it can be trickier. If you've never done that kind of thing before, whether you're on the mentee side, you're trying to connect with someone who can help you and kind of lead you around the project, or whether you're an experienced veteran of the project and community and you have an opportunity to help others. So I'm hoping that we can improve access to mentoring resources and to mentors in the future. I don't have very concrete thoughts. Maybe come back to me in month 3 instead of week 3, and maybe you'll have some more concrete big bets. But right now, a lot of what I'm doing is just around listening and trying to understand all the different things that are happening in Fedora in ways that I couldn't when I was just a volunteer. I see another anonymous question. From will there be a flock in 2023? It's in the cards. We're looking at it. I don't have a lot of information to say just yet, but it's something that, at least from my end, we're really wanting to do. It's been 2 years since we've had, I was there at Flock Budapest when the last time we did Flock. And, I'm really excited that we could possibly look at, trying to bring people together again for the first time in a really long time. I think it's something that not just me, but also Matthew and the rest of, and Ben and the Fedora leadership are really interested in trying to drive this forward. Life goes in a mysterious way, so I don't want to promise anything right now of exactly where or how the exact details, but it is something that we want to do. We want to have a flock again in 2023. So trying to figure out how that will work with a lot of our virtual events, which Marie has been an amazing steward of. and helping drive that. She has been a huge part of our success in the virtual space. We don't want to throw away all of that. We don't want to leave that all behind either. So trying to figure out what the right balance is, that's going to be the tricky part of the equation. But we also recognize it's been a long time since we've had in-person. So I'm hoping we can bring folks together again. Question from Eduard, good friend here. First, congrats on this role, you're a great fit. Are we, Fedora project, already prepared to restart in-person events? Flock and Nest was a great example on how people felt about in-person after a pandemic. This is a tricky question because I think, especially in a community as large as Fedora, and we have a large range of people from many different backgrounds, people who have, small children, or people who are even, immunocompromised, where like in person is something that's really it's not as easy of a decision for them as it might be for someone else, or even for someone like me. So, I think we are really, we recognize that the in-person events have a lot of value, right? They're a really important part of our project. At the same time, the way things are in our crazy wild world today, I don't think we're ever going to have 100%, everyone on board for, going for in-person or virtual. But my hope is that as the project leadership and as the community, we can do the best job we can to balance those two sides of things. So again, like I said, I especially don't want to throw away all this amazing work around virtual events that Marie has helped steward. Fedora has kind of been an anomaly in this space. These virtual events that we have, there's not a lot of projects that are even like, a lot of people are burnt out, but Fedora is really doing great work in the virtual event space. So my hope is that we can have a better job of balancing the two. I think for a long time, we've kind of been exclusively on the virtual side, as COVID has kind of been a huge part of that equation. But as the balance is shifting, I'm hoping that we can strike the right balance between having great virtual events and bringing people together who are ready to travel. Question from Neil, can we finally have a flock in the US again? We haven't had one in years. That is a good question. And right now, anything is on the table. I was kind of thinking it might be helpful for me just to try to wrap my head around this, because it's been 2 years, to maybe try to do a community survey around our flagship event next year, just to understand where the temperature gauge is. Because, I have my suspicions, I have my my hypotheses, but, Fedora is huge, and I'd like to test that hypothesis. So I'm hoping that we could try to do like a survey or something in the coming weeks or couple months as we start to move that conversation forward, because especially if we're going somewhere like the US, I want to make sure we have a lot of lead time for folks who will be, we have to go for visa applications, because I know that's been a really sticky point for the US, especially right now. I'm hearing people who have like 4 or 5 month waiting times for a visa appointment. And we have a lot of folks who that's a reality of their world, that that's something they have to do. So no definite location yet, but I do want to try to get some feelers out there for what people want to do next year, or where they want to go. So nothing concrete right now, but stay tuned for that. I do want to try to get more perspective on that. What can we expect with Fedora and Windows compatibility, gaming, and video editing? It's a good question. We do have a games SIG of folks that package a lot of open source games, but also beyond. We also have a pretty growing community of people who do gaming in a number of places. I'm not the right person to answer this question, but I do encourage you to hang out and attend some of the sessions here at the release party. You might find there's some folks across the project who are more familiar with that side of things than I would be. My confession is I've actually never owned a Windows device in my life, so I'm definitely not the right person to answer that, unfortunately. All right, well, we are about 10 minutes past time. I appreciate all the questions and for folks being so engaged with the session. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. I'm really excited to be in this new role and be a part of Fedora in this new, exciting, big way. And take care, everyone, and I will see you around in the Fedora universe.